All right, everybody, welcome to our Thursday night call. We're back! Yay! It feels like it's been forever. Sonia and I were just talking about how it's been so long since we've done this, like 2 months almost. So I've been mentioning in our group about talking about dreams and dream boards and why those are important and what in the world am I talking about. So I've been taking a class called Rock the Dream from Tim and Michelle Thomas, and it has been phenomenal. It has been so good. And one of the things that they shared with us was about these dream boards and about how like some different practical things than I had heard before. I mean, a lot of us have done dream boards before, but they gave us some interesting tips that I hadn't heard of or thought about previously. So I'm going to share those with you. But I also want to give you like a little sneak peek into the class because there's some stories that were told this particular week, several weeks ago now, when we first tried to do this whole thing and my computer died. There was some stories shared that week that just were really profound, and I thought that a lot of us could identify with pieces of that. So I wanted to share those with y'all so you could get a little glimpse into the class and also maybe get some encouragement from these stories too. So I'm going to play a couple different clips. It may take me a second to get things ready in the right spot. I have little notes in here in my notes from the class, like what time I wanted to start the thing. And this may be a little longer just because I want to talk a little bit too after we hear the clips, but I'll try to keep it not super long. So without any further ado, Tim and Michelle Thomas and Rock the Dream. All right, this first story, I'm not going to share my screen just for privacy reasons of people in the class, but I want you to hear what they have to say. So Sonia, you may have to tell me because of my headphones if you can even hear this. This may not work actually now that I think about it. Let's try it. So I'm going to hit play and you tell me if you can hear it. You hear anything? Okay. Hold on. Let me see here. I'm gonna back this back up a little. I'm going to take my headphones. Okay. Let's see here. Trying to figure out a way to do this. I know I can play it on my phone. And then, oh no, because there's no microphone on the, I might be able to play it on my phone and you can hear it on my microphone on my headphones. We'll try that. Hold on just a second. I gotta find the video now. Sorry guys, gotta love technology, right?
So while she's looking for that video, I'm going to chime in here with a couple things from the call earlier today. Talking about keeping catalog samples and brochures with you this summer. I'm going to be out seeing lots of people that I mainly see during the summertime with camping trips and vacations and whatnot. And so I thought that was a really good tip to have stuff with you so you can physically leave a sample with somebody. And I also like the idea of actually having all of my documents and tips and graphics in one place. Because right now I have them in like 3 or 4 different places and I never remember which one is where and it drives me crazy. So just kind of getting organized and ready for summer because like they've been saying, there's something big coming and I want to be ready for whatever that big thing is. So that's my 2 cents worth here.
Yes, I love those tips. And I love, like Charlotte was saying, she uses a thing called Google. Do you remember what it's called? Google
Keep.
Google Keep, yeah. I use Trello, which is very similar. I think they're set up a little bit differently, but they're both free programs and you can keep lots of notes and things in there. You can use your phone notes too, but if you do Google Keep or Trello or something like that, you can access it from your computer as well. And then it's really easy to just copy and paste stuff into messages or emails or whatever to people. So yeah, those are some really, really good tips. I like that a lot. And I don't know if you saw Krista's comment on there too about how she keeps some business cards and a slam full of Slim in her wallet. So even if that's all she has with her, she still has something. So I think that's really fun. So, all right, let's try this. Let me know if you can hear this, if it's understandable. Oops, let me back it up just a sec. Sorry.
It's hard. Some of your experience with doing a dream board, like maybe 2 or 3 of you just share.
Can you hear that? Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, whoever wants to.
I do that with a microphone.
Well, I'll share a little something because it's hard for me to do a dream board and affirmations. When we first started Plexus 3.5 years ago, I did a lot of those things. And I woke up in the morning and somebody had written all over my dream boards and my affirmations, changing them to be more scriptural, more, instead of I can do, I don't know. Anyway, I'm reaching out to people for Plexus, and instead of Plexus was crossed out and Jesus was written all over it. And so I've had a couple family members really change things up for me. So anytime I sit down and do a dream board, anything like that, I have a lot of the Christian guilt stuff that goes through. Yeah. I'm not supposed to have these things. I'm not worthy of them. I know we talked about that on, I think, one of the first weeks. And so just breaking through those barriers and knowing that it's okay, even if he's not dreaming, it's okay that I dream. And maybe, because I know on my dream board, you guys saw it, a lot of stuff is his life, his cowboy life, things like that, but that's, we're one, so that's part of the dream together. But sometimes it's hard to break through that, where you're supposed to be as a Christian wife and submissive and everything. But does that make sense?
Yes, actually it makes
so pushing through that and to see that dreaming is okay. It's not unscriptural. It's not asking for more than what God wants me to have. And it's, so that's kind of, it's really hard to make dream boards, but I think it's a good thing.
Wow. One of the things I love, sorry, let's say this real quick. One of the things I love about this whole process is digging into that kind of stuff, because what I find more often than not, the stuff that stops us isn't what is on the surface. It's the stuff that's so deep, like what you're going through, that you probably would never share with anyone else, or maybe you have, but most people don't talk about this stuff. And so they just live it, and then they go and they meet with their upline, and their upline's going, well, what's the problem? And you're afraid to give that answer. Maybe there's something else that maybe is a little bit difficult, and that's what you'll talk about. You won't talk about this stuff, but that's why talking about Rock the Dream is so important, because we find out the real nitty gritty, and you get really truthful. That's the whole thing, is you get actually truthful, which is really hard to do.
And one of the things that we're going to talk about this week, which is crazy, we're doing programs this week, right? So one of the things that we talk about is fear programs. One of the things that has affected Tim and I along the journey was unbiblical, fear of
untruthful biblical beliefs.
Yeah, and how we had went through a period of time where God had really revealed Himself to us, and we really felt like, Tim's the head of the home, and I am, I'll never work. Like, I had actually committed to never working outside the home. Like, I had actually committed to never working outside the headship of my husband. And so, this is like really strong beliefs, of all this stuff. And so to go from that, and then we get into Plexus, and here I'm being successful, and then, Tim, we're doing this together. And it's the dynamics of all that you start messing with your head, and we come together and we're like, no, we can do this. Like, I can still be submissive. I can still be a loving mom, a wife, and I can still have success, but it's our success, like, it's not, if I'm successful, he's successful. If he's successful, I'm successful, because
buffering.
That's where that's how it was designed. And even, the Proverbs 31 woman, I mean, she's very entrepreneurial. Like, if you read that scripture, you're not sitting around, you have lots of goals for your family. You're out there before everybody wakes up, and you are the, like, the glory of your husband. And so it's like I think
Destiny, like, this is so cool, because I think some of these things are like keep us held back, and it's like I think it can create freedom if we recognize it. So I'm excited. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, anybody else?
Okay, so that's the first part. I'm trying to pause it. There we go. I just love what Michelle had to say there, though, about it's possible to be both successful and under that whole thing where God says that the husband is the head of the home and all that. It's possible to do both, and to have it work. I love that. And the whole Proverbs 31 thing, yeah, that's totally true. It's totally. I mean, she's a little overwhelming and intimidating, but it's totally possible, and we can do that. One of the things that somebody said after this little clip, I just wanted to share a couple of the things that somebody said. So I really liked how they put this. Another lady piped in and said something like, I have had similar experiences of people telling me about that. I talk more about Plexus than I do about Jesus or whatever. And she's like, you know what? I've always come at this business from the perspective of this is a way to make God famous. And if it's not making God famous and building his kingdom, then I don't want any part of it. But I see, we can just look around and hear any story from any event or anything regarding this company. God's fingerprints are all over all of it. Like, there's people who have found Jesus in the store line at convention, people getting baptized in hotel pools in the oceans in Hawaii, like huge. I mean, God's fingerprints are all over this. Lori Harrison has a really awesome story about going to corporate. She actually anointed with oil all of the doorways at corporate. She anointed the shelves in the warehouse, especially around Profile 5. There's so much prayer all over this company. And we may not be a Christian company necessarily, but a lot of us who do it are Christians, and that makes a huge difference. We are, my friend Jana, when we were in Vegas the first time for convention, she's like, I learned two things being in Vegas. Everybody needs Jesus and everybody needs Plexus, and I am so thankful to be an ambassador for both. I love that, you guys. That's what we have. I love that. So this is something, like, don't let this whole thing stop you and thinking, okay, well, I can't do this because this isn't Christian or scriptural or whatever, but it is. You're helping your family, you're helping other people, you're building God's kingdom. I mean, you can't give to missions if you don't have any extra money, right? If you do this business, you're going to have more money to give to missions. It's really fun. Okay. So another person said that, God is our provider, and what if he wants to use Plexus to provide? He wants to provide that vehicle for you to do. I mean, we know people that have been missionaries who were able to go and do that because of Plexus. People will be able to go on mission trips, give to the Thrive Homes in Thailand, the people coming out of sex trafficking. Like, all of this stuff that's happened because of this company. So it's a vehicle for us to be able to do those things that God's called us to do. Okay, let me see what else I wanted to point out here. They talk about for your program. She mentioned that earlier. It's a little similar to the mindset training where he talks about bitterness and unforgiveness and those kind of things that are kind of the root of a lot of the blocks that we put in our own lives. One of the comments that they made, though, that really stuck out to me was, Michelle says they have to do this all the time when they're doing even their planning, and they do a weekly planning meeting, her and Tim. And Tim asks all the time, okay, so how does this get us closer to the dream? So they talk about the dream as, the thing that God planted inside of them, not necessarily being successful with Plexus. That's not what the dream is. It's the thing that God planted inside of them that he wants them to fulfill. So every decision they make, they pass it through the filter of, is this for the sake of the dream? Everything that comes at them. Michelle said that she was crying one day, really upset about something somebody had said to her that wasn't very nice. She's like, I've driven hours to go and help these people. Like, I've spent a lot of time, invested a lot of time for them, and then they treat me like this. And so she's like, I have to look at that and say, for the sake of the dream, I'm going to continue building that relationship. I'm not going to cut it off. I'm not going to cut that leg off. I'm going to continue building that relationship because for the sake of the dream, that's what's necessary. She says, I know people who they get upset with somebody on their team and they basically cut off a leg of their team because they don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. And that's hurting everybody in the long run. That's not helping anybody. So making sure that for the sake of the dream, you're filtering things through that so that you can see things when people tell you no, when something's hard, for the sake of the dream, whatever that dream is. Maybe, I know for Sonia, that's adoption. I know that for other people on our team, there's other dreams that we want to be able to accomplish. For the sake of that dream, we're going to keep pushing through that hard stuff. And I thought that was really good. All right, let me see. Okay. So it also talks about insecurity a little bit. And how we respond to different things in our lives. Kind of what I just said about the for the sake of the dream thing. My notes are a little confusing because I watched it once and I went back and added more notes. So I'm trying to decipher. Being willing to forgive is the first step to freedom. Freedom of knowing yourself and being able to fix what's broken. You can't fix or heal what you can't acknowledge. Knowing that we're in the dark leads to the truth that gives us the power to overcome it. Don't measure your journey or your darkness against someone else's, because they're not in the same place you are. And the other thing they talked about a lot was taking responsibility. Responsibility is the power to love and lead others, and you won't fear taking charge. You'll be fearless. No one can stop you. Cultivating good relationships for the sake of the dream. You won't fear what anyone says or does because you are aligned with the truth. Taking responsibility is 100% going to determine how far you can go with your dreams. Don't rely on someone else to do it. Dream big and long term. 10 years down the road, where do you want to be? Believe in the dream and have faith. Okay, so then I'm going to try and find this next clip, 48. It's hard because I can't see once it starts playing, I can't tell what the time is on it. 48:27. Close enough. Okay.
Maybe really prone to fears about what might happen in the future. Yes, there are things that are going to happen. As we've already said, things are going to happen. But that should not change the fact that God has planted things in your heart to do. And he's given you a specific talent, right? He gives everyone talents. Every single person has been given something to do with. But you can bury it in the ground, or you can do something with it. And if you're going to listen to everything that's going on around there all the time with all the fear-mongering, then you'll probably just bury it in the ground. So my point is, don't be unaware, but don't be consumed with those things. You've got to know when there's a fear program running. And for me, I woke up after 2012 when I had decided in my mind, I had written it, not written it out, but I thought, these things are going to happen, and then boom, it's going to get really bad. And it didn't happen. And I realized how finite my mind is and how I don't know everything, and that God is much more, I don't know, he's got more long-suffering than what I am, okay? So that's another big one.
Okay, I'm going to stop that one right there. I just like what he said there about, all of the bad things happening in the world these days. None of that changes the things that God has put in us. He's not surprised. He's not surprised by diagnoses. He's not surprised by, catastrophic things happening in our lives, fire, whatever. He's not surprised by any of that stuff. And he's planted something in us that we are in charge of stewarding. And that's something that really hit me earlier this year. There was a sermon at church where our pastor was talking about, have you been given a gift and are you using it well? Are you stewarding that the way that you feel God has called you to do? And I knew that I wasn't with my business. I knew that I have a huge gift here and I was not doing what I should have been doing with it. And so that's something I'm still working on. It's moving into that because it's scary, but it's something that is necessary. God has called me to do it and I better be obedient. Okay, so the next one, but the other one, I'll just real quick touch on this. He says, on the topic of money and wealth, don't cut out half the Bible and all the people that God has blessed and given much money and power and authority to because they were his friends. He used them to do great things. Make sure you have balance. Money can bring out the worst in people, but God uses it to do incredible things too. We have a responsibility to do what's right with what we've been given, and God has also created this world. The original intention in Eden was for them to enjoy it. Enjoyment is part of life. We're created for worship, yes, but also to enjoy life. He's like, okay, so think about in the garden. They walked with God in the evenings. What did they do the rest of the day? Like, they didn't have to work. They were enjoying each other in the garden, right? Like, what else were they going to do? So, to think about that. Anyways, God loves giving us good gifts, and he is a good father. Okay, so 54, the last little bit here. This is Michelle's story of kind of how they got to where they're at, and I just think it's really, really powerful.
A time where we just felt like,
Hold on, let me back it up. I obviously didn't start that right.
But I also also understand that God wants me to enjoy things. I'm his son. That's how I look at it. I'm his son.
We're almost there.
So I was able to overcome a fear program because I started to understand, like, I love my kids. They're way better. I love to give my kids things. I want them to have what they want, even. I'm not just trying to pick and choose the things that they want. I want them to have what they want. And I'm not even a really great father compared to God. God's like a billion times better of a father than I'll ever be. And he cares way more than I can ever care. So all I'm saying is that there's actually joy for him in giving us good things. So the last one, I know we're running out of time.
Okay, so here's Michelle's story.
Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I'll just kind of say this. One of the things that was really kind of tough for us, going back to when we first started Plexus, and even before Plexus, was that I had been making I had a job. Tim was pursuing music, and I was making most of the money, and I was making like a good income, almost 6 figures, retirement benefits, all that. And we ended up, going through this period of time where we just felt like, Tim had prayed about it, and he's like, I'm supposed to be the one taking care of the family. You need to be at home with the kids. And we went through this whole transition where I quit my job. He was making like a third of what I was making. I mean, on paper, it was crazy. On paper, it would have made 0 cents. Our rent alone was like, half, like it wouldn't even have covered what our expenses were. But so we prayed about it. We believed in what the principles of what we were talking about, and we took a leap of faith. I quit my job. Tim took on 2 jobs. I babysat kids, but we wanted to get our life in order. We felt like it was out of order. I felt like I was becoming disconnected from my kids, and I felt like I needed to be there with my kids. That was the whole thing, is that I wanted to be there for my kids. I liked working, so I was kind of one of those people that did like working, but I wanted to be there, and I didn't want to miss sports and all that kind of stuff. And so anyways, we went through this transition, and then Plexus, that's when Plexus came along, because we were financially struggling because it's tight to be on one income. And so Tim was making enough money to pay the bills, and we were making it happen. And actually, we go back to that year in our life, or the couple years in our life, whenever it was like that. And, I was making my own laundry detergent, and I was cutting all my coupons and all that kind of stuff. That was probably the best 2 years, some of the best 2 years of our lives, because we had done something so principled, that we believed in it so much, that we just felt like God was just, the grace was there. And so anyways, during that season of time, that's when Plexus came along, and I started having success, and I started making money. And Tim wasn't on board at first, and he was, he'd be at home, and I was on my phone, and it caused like some issues. I mean, it did cause marital issues. And one of the things that there was a fear of is kind of losing our relationship. And, I said this from the beginning: if you gain a business but lose a marriage, it was not worth it. And so you can quote me on that. It is not worth losing a marriage over a business. And so, we had to constantly go back to the root of what we believe. And I do believe you can be a very successful woman and submissive at the same time, and a successful mom. Like, I believe you can do it all. I believe you can inspire your kids. I believe you can honor your husband. I believe that you can do it all, but it will challenge you, and it will cause you to have to really seek out the truth and all that.
I think that the challenge for the women on here that are watching, the challenge is going to be, if you want to do it, if you really believe in it, having the patience if you're dealing with a husband that isn't on board, right? Mm-hmm. Having the patience to be that submissive wife like Michelle is talking about, at the same time that you're also trying to communicate your dream and your heart and your love for what you're doing, and that you really want it. And sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes some conversations have to be had, and those things have to take a little bit of time. It has to sink in. Yeah. And the good news is that I think there are ways to do that. I mean, it worked for us, and I will say this about men, is that I think that there's an insecurity for a lot of men, and I know I'm saying this. I don't normally say this, but I'm talking to mostly women. So there's an insecurity for a lot of men in the
Norm and Tim are on here.
in the idea of maybe their wife making more money than them. That can be an insecurity. Another one can be that that she would become really, really independent or whatever, and a man can feel like he could lose what he has with his wife because of that, because a lot of times for men, that's what they feel like they actually even bring to the table. And so that can actually be something, and so there can be some defensiveness towards that, not your dream. It's the other thing that they're afraid of. And so you have got to be willing to understand and communicate if you want to go after your dream. I'm not saying like you have to do this. I'm saying like if you want to go after your dream, you have to understand and be willing to communicate those things, or else you're going to always have this stumbling block, and it's going to be really, really, really hard. And you don't want, as Michelle said, it's not worth it to lose a marriage over a business. And so, you know, Michelle was willing. Here's the thing about Michelle. She was willing to stop if I told her no, and I always understood that, which made me have a lot of desire for her to have what she wanted. It was weird because when she would act like she was willing to you know, be there, like to listen to what my thoughts and my feelings about this stuff, then it made me want for her to have it. So that's just a little bit of advice on dealing with the relational side of it.
I always tell people, like, women will come to me and they're like, you know, my husband feels like I'm spending too much time on the business, and, you know, like, and then they tend to want to just like do it anyways because, you know, no one's going to tell me what to do and stuff. And I say, well, have you ever tried the approach of just saying like, when would it be good for me to do it? Like, when would you be okay for me to do it? And a lot of times when you ask that question, there's a lot more freedom and flexibility in that anyways. And when you get the blessing of your spouse, you can it's just a lot of, you clear up a lot of, I don't know, chaos. And so I always think it's very good.
And I know that there are some women who would be totally aghast at me saying anything about how to do anything. So I'm telling you, this is my opinion. And I think that it's worked well for us to have for our relationship, for us to build a business, but you don't have to listen.
Yeah, you don't. Okay, so
I just thought that was really good. It's kind of funny. The lady who shared after they turned off the recording for this, she was talking about how she's kind of got the opposite problem than the first lady did. How her husband is so super supportive that it intimidates her. Like she's afraid of failing because of it. So like, that keeps her stuck. So it was kind of both ends of the spectrum, and I just thought that was really good. And so the advice that they gave her was, Tim's like, there are so many people who would pay to have what you have. Like there are so many people who want to have a husband that's super supportive. And he's like, well, maybe you just need to talk to him and ask him, you know, let's chat about these goals. Like your encouragement of me is a little bit too much pressure, or, you know, and have that conversation with them and tell them thanks for being an encourager, you know, because there's so many people out there. I mean, Sarah Marvel comes to mind. Her husband was mean when she first started. Like he was awful about it. Chris McCall, same thing. They were mean about it. And now they're all on board. They're all investors. Like I think they're both emeralds at least, both those guys. Anyway, but just basically the whole point I wanted to share these was because I know that we're either one of the, you know, we're either on one side of the spectrum where, well, okay, I guess there could be one extra one. Like we're either one end of the spectrum where the husband's like totally against what you're doing, and the other end of the spectrum where they're like totally for what you're doing, and it's maybe even intimidating. But there may be kind of like in the middle where they don't care one way or the other. And so there could be any of those options. My husband's a little bit kind of in the middle of that. He doesn't really care. I mean, he cares and he wants me to succeed, but he's probably more on the end of but he's not like always in my business kind of a thing. So he's in between there somewhere. After this call, I told him, thank you for being supportive. Thank you for being there. Thank you for pushing me. Because he does, every once in a while, he'll get to that point where he's pushing me and I'm like, get back off, you know, but it's good for both of us. So practical tips on dream boards. The things that Tim was telling us about with dream boards. First of all, make sure it's not just all words. Words are good. But you want, like if you're cutting out of magazines or whatever, you want to have visual, like pictures that you can see, like the beach at Hawaii or, you know, different things like that. But on those pictures, you need to write, like for instance, I have a picture of Maui and I need to go write on it. Emerald Extravaganza, and then date it, because he says you write what it is, like what your goal is with that picture, and then you put a date on it. And those two tips, I mean, there's very simple things I hadn't thought about before, but that make a big impact in my mental situation. Some of the things that like Charlotte talked about in the Spark call today, or Brenda actually is the one that brought it up, but I've heard Charlotte do this. I've seen her do this, and she's told me things like this too. Like my first exposure to Plexus was at a TTAP retreat in Tampa, outside of Tampa, in 2014. And Charlotte and I randomly got paired as roommates. It was a God thing. But she was sitting there over on her phone and talking about how her upline told her that when she checks her reports in the back office, this is like 2 back offices ago, but you could go into your reports and you could select how many levels you wanted to see. And it would only show you how many ever you said. So I think she might have been gold at the time, I think. Anyway, she said, my upline says that I'm supposed to come in here and hit 12. 12 was the biggest number you could get to. So she only had like level 1s and 2s at the time, but she's like, always go to 12 because that's what my upline says to do, right? Because it's a mental thing. And so I remember her saying that way back then. And then what Brenda shared tonight about how when she wanted to be prepared for all these customers that she was going to have. So she printed out 50 copies of stuff so that she would be prepared for all of those things. I've done that too. I printed out, it's better to be prepared. It's a whole mental hurdle of, okay, I have to stop this lack mentality of I'm only going to have a couple. I'm only going to, if that. It's only going to be 1 or 0, but it's God's going to like pour in the blessings, and we have to believe in faith for that. So just a couple of kind of practical things that you can do to make those visions more realistic in your brain, I guess, make it more visual. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but anyway, to make them more powerful. And I just wanted to share those stories from those ladies because I just thought that was good perspective, and to know that we're not alone. I know that a lot of people probably feel like, hey, I'm in this situation. This is what's happening. I'm not getting support, or I'm getting too much support, whatever. And they feel like they're the only ones that have that problem. And so I just wanted to share those because I know that can be encouraging. So that's what I have for tonight. I know we went a little over, like a lot over, and I apologize. We're going to get off of here now. And I hope you all have a good week, and we will be back with you next week. So we'll see you later. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.